Hey, family, Pastor Mike here, and welcome to another edition of Empowering Conversations That Act, Awaken the Conscience Today. And I am pleased tonight to have my partners, not in crime, in conversation, Dr. Maurice Wallace, Reverend Alicia Gordon, and those who've been watching over the past, I guess we started last year? Yeah, we always have some great conversation, inspiring, enlightening, and I'm grateful to have them here tonight, and grateful for all of you who are joining on tonight, because this would not be possible without you all supporting us in this space. And as you see, a little different. We usually do this on a streaming platform, but tonight we are live in FCBC. In FCBC, we in this empty building, y'all. All right, we here tonight having a good time. And so again, thankful, so grateful for all of you who are joining. And we just gonna go right into it. We only got about an hour, and you know how we go. We get started and keep on talking on and on and on and on. And so we tonight we're gonna be talking about the state of politics. So we'll hit some political issues, some hot points right now, and we'll just dive into it. And we'll begin as always, with our current events. And I got some current events that I want to talk about. Now, I want to first start with this situation in the Catholic Diocese of Phoenix, all right? Now, I don't know if you all have read this or heard this. Now, this is not really a political issue per se, but I could not, avoid talking about this tonight. And I wanted to hear Dr. Maurice and Reverend Alicia really talk about this. But if you haven't heard, there's a priest, his name is Andres Arango, in the Archdiocese of Phoenix in Arizona, who apparently over the past 10 years has baptized thousands of people. And now the Catholic Church, the diocese, is saying that those baptisms are not valid because when he spoke the words of baptism, he misspoke one word. So what he said was, we baptize you in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. What he was supposed to say is, I baptize you in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And the bishop of the diocese was informed that Father Arango was saying it wrong. And the diocese, I'm going to pause and let y'all get this. The diocese had an investigation into saying we instead of I.
All them resources.
And listen, and they rendered thousands of baptisms invalid. Think about that for a second. What are your feelings on that?
Whoa. Whoa. A couple of things come quickly to mind. The first is, this is an instance of the consequences of a kind of over-institutionalizing of our faith. To such a degree that an institution, a major world institution,
Catholic Church,
can declare my baptism invalid. That seems absurd to me, frankly. It's hard for me to wrap my mind around. I don't mean to be disrespectful. It's just hard for me to wrap my mind around. And I think it's a consequence of the ways in which we grab hold of the letter of the law, and we forget the spirit of it altogether, and it's invalidating experience. How do you invalidate someone's relational experience in the faith? And I'm afraid that there's going to be, I'm predicting that there's going to be a little backlash from this. That folk will speak up and declare that their baptism can't be validated or invalidated.
That's it. That's it.
What you think, Alicia?
No, I think that's right. I mean, one, my thought was the amount of time and energy and resources it takes as an institution to investigate something like that. Thousands and thousands of people, right? So that already tells me that your priorities are misaligned, right? That you would use time and energy to do that. But I think you are absolutely right, is that we have an institutionalized relationship right?
Yeah.
My baptism is a public witness to what I've already decided in my heart. Right?
Yeah.
So there is nothing man can say or do to invalidate that, because it was a heart decision, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm interested in seeing how this all plays out. I'm interested in seeing how the diocese as a whole begins to think about, because even my thought was like, as liturgy, there's liturgy that says we do this as a congregational thing, right?
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering, like, why in this instance is a matter of an I or we? Because then it's like, theologically, what do you believe about who you are as a human being?
Yeah.
Wow. That's
Yeah,
good.
because the idea is the I represents Christ. That
Right.
and the theology says that they believe it says this, that no community baptizes, that Christ alone baptizes, which means then that the priest in that moment, right, is that whole notion with communion, like consubstantiation or transubstantiation. Is Christ with the elements, or do the elements actually become? Well, in this case, the priest now becomes Christ. So he has to say, I baptize you. And somehow the individual baptism means more than the communal responsibility, right? And so think about I like what you said, that no one, like, the baptism is a public sign, right? And the idea that somehow it can be made invalid, no, impossible. The experience was not performative. It was because persons came into the faith, and this became, as Martin Luther would say, the outward and visible sign of an inward and spiritual grace. But think about, as you said, the resources, the people who were interviewed. Can you imagine that conversation? Listen, when Father Arango baptized you, do you remember did he say I or we? Just think about that conversation. Wow. I can't remember. Maybe he said we. Does it matter? I want to know. I want to believe somebody had to say, does it really matter?
Doesn't matter.
And to go a step further, if you think about the resources directed towards such an investigation, you have to wonder what doesn't get resourced because of this kind of activity. And I want to say this. I think this is an occasion for our mourning. We can easily sort of determine that there's a certain kind of illogic operating here. But there are a number of people for whom this is deeply personal and it affects them directly. And they can't easily disengage themselves from the kind of judgment that the church, because they've trusted in the church for a long, long time, they can't easily disengage themselves from the judgment of the church and are now in the position where they're having to wrestle with the status of their baptism and trying to figure out what it all means. I feel like mourning with those people because it seems unnecessary. It seems unfortunate.
Yeah. So what does that mean? And your word is the best. Absurd. So now what does that mean? They have to get baptized again with the right words. So here's a deep thing. You can now get the right words and have the wrong spirit.
My God.
Right words, but wrong spirit. Right. Like what is more important in that moment? So, I pray for those who have been told that their baptisms were not valid because of one word. One word.
Yeah.
And it's tragic, but it wasn't really political, but it was, we're church people, right? And to read that, when I was sent that article, I was blown away because I could not fathom that thousands of people were being told that your baptism meant nothing.
Well, can I say this? We're some time away from it, but I have vague recollections of interdenominational disagreement
I knew you
about the status of baptism. Right?
Words. It ain't. Is it in Jesus' name?
There you go.
Is it in the Father, Son, the Holy Spirit? What did Jesus say? Man, look, at the end of the day, it's about, as you said, what work is being done.
Yeah.
Whose lives are being impacted.
Yeah. And how are you living out your baptism?
Oh God, that's a whole different conversation.
How are you living out your baptism? And I think the question is a question that is asked, that the individual has to ask himself. If you can fathom that your baptism is somehow valid or invalid, how does your life reflect either its validity or its invalidity, right? I think this is a deep, soul-searching question.
Let me say this, and I'm gonna tell you, you know, at times, Doc, you know me for a long time. I'm gonna say this and move on because it's controversy, and I'm gonna say it and move on. You know, because I know we got time, but isn't it amazing that you would invalidate baptism, but not invalidate some priests?
I'm trying to find something.
Hold on.
Uh-oh.
Right? I'm gonna leave that right there.
There.
But protect priests from damaging, destructive death behavior.
Yeah.
But now tell a priest he got one word wrong.
Yeah.
He resigned, and now those baptisms mean nothing. I'm going to leave that there. Okay, I'm going to leave it right there. All right, here's the next current event. Today, for those who are watching on the news, was the funeral for Amir Locke, the young man who was killed in Minneapolis, Minnesota, because of a no-knock warrant. Today in Minneapolis, Reverend Al Sharpton eulogized the young man. But this is not the first. Tragically, I hate to say it won't be the last time that there will be, an investigation into the conduct of police. But these no-knock warrants where police can just break in a house. And in the case of Amir, he was not the target of the warrant. He was not who they were looking for. And they said that when he was on his couch sleep, he came up with a gun. Now, let me just tell you right now. Let me tell you right now. If my door is kicked in at that point, right, and I have protection in my house, I'm not asking questions. So the question becomes, what do you expect from someone? And he had a license to carry it. It was a legal firearm. And they knocked in the man's house and shot at him because he had a gun in his house, a legal gun. Right? It brings to memory, of course, again, Breonna Taylor. Yep. And so many others. And I think there were some things you looked up about that, Alicia.
Katherine Johnson, 92-year-old woman in Atlanta. No-knock warrant. They get ready to bust through her door. She has a gun. She shoots through the door. She's a 92-year-old woman. It's the middle of the night. And they end up shooting 34 rounds into her house. Right? And then you have Ayanna Stanley, 7-year-old.
I remember that.
The SWAT threw a flash bomb into the house, of course. And they immediately come in and shoot the girl in the neck. Wow. Right?
I remember that one.
And it's interesting because I looked something up. It was a story on NPR about the history of no-knock warrants, and it's actually something that started in the Nixon administration, which
makes sense.
That makes sense, right? Yeah. But I would love for us to be thinking about, this over-militarized response, right, to finding. The article talked about that many of the no-knock warrants were looking for people because of marijuana possession. Right, probably one of the lowest of when you think about drug felonies. So I would love for us to be thinking about there were states in Oregon and Florida and Louisville, Kentucky has outlawed no-knock warrants because the
Breonna Taylor thing.
Because of Breonna Taylor. So it was really interesting to really look at the 8 to 10 people innocent people die because of no-knock warrants
every year.
I don't think those lives are especially valued by the state, obviously. To hear the state respond to these tragedies is to imagine that they regard these lives as collateral damage.
Yeah.
That the lives themselves are hardly valued as brother and sister human beings. And the state seems not willing to own its own criminality in these episodes. And so this is a case in point. And I think it goes further to the idea that it's not clear to me that this nation ever intended for black folks to be able to defend themselves.
Say it now.
And there's a marvelous book, I think it's called The Second, by a historian, Carol Anderson. I hope I'm getting this right. But it takes us all the way back to to the discussions around the Second Amendment and the ways in which the specter, the fear of black reprisal and black vindication for enslavement is part of, is baked into the conversations going on around the amendment, right? It wasn't for us in the first place, but it's worth. I can't do justice to that history, to that argument, but it is really worth paying some attention to.
Well, we think about how these tactics, though, are acts of terror on our neighborhoods. You just think that at any moment, at any time, someone with a gun
In the middle of the night.
in the middle of the night or the middle of the day can break into your home, right, and terrorize you or inflict violence on you. And you just think about the psyche of that, right? And how that permeates into our communities. And, you know, I heard you talking about with the mother, the funeral today, about what that does to our communities to be in a constant state of terror in our own homes, right? The place in which we're supposed to be finding solace and peace.
No, I think you know, we know this historically in many of underserved communities, in urban centers. You know, the truth is we don't always want to use the language, but many residents feel as though they're living in occupied territory in many ways. And when you have law enforcement, and again, we know the role of law enforcement. We understand the need. I mean, I'm going to tell you right now, we're in Harlem right now, and there are people who want to see police because of the rise in violence. But that doesn't give a permissiveness, right? To be reckless. And what we're talking about is the recklessness of law enforcement, the recklessness. Now, it doesn't mean that there haven't been people who are caught on no-knock warrants, but something has to be done. I like what Louisville has done and other places, ban them all together. Because if you have
the risks are too high.
The risk is too high. And if you have a warrant for someone and you're looking for someone, that's clear. But the no-knock has shown that there are dangers attached to this. And as you said, the damage done is unrepairable. You cannot repair it when a life is lost senselessly. And Minneapolis, at this point, should be tired of having to make settlements, right? Because this is not the first time that there's going to be some potential misconduct. Potential, we hope. But when we look at Minneapolis, and one thing we don't always know, the history of settling that city has in these cases. So it was tragic. And all we can pray is that the idea of banning them across the board, right, can happen. And I don't know how the federal intervention can look challenging, but we have to do something in terms of, and maybe even talking about it more.
And we're already all traumatized by the pandemic. Now you sort of create more circumstances for more trauma. It's horrible that lives are lost, but we also have to remember that some people survive.
That's right.
And what does it mean for someone who survives to have to live under those conditions? It must be mentally depleting every day to feel like you're living in occupied territory, to feel the weight of terror, and not know at any given time that law enforcement could break in. And you never know, as you said from the beginning, you don't know who's behind the door.
You don't know who's behind the door. You just know someone has kicked in your door. And you have a right to protect yourself if you don't know. And you can't justify the murder by saying, well, we were here on a no-knock warrant. So that means you can walk anywhere and say, I had a no-knock warrant, and we're just going to start killing. So it's tragic, and we wanted to make sure we brought that to light, because here's what happens. We don't hear about it all the time. We don't hear of those, because you said 8 to 10 a year. We don't hear of 8 to 10 a year. Right? So in some communities, this behavior by police has become normalized. So think about, I won't go into this fully, but think about in our communities when we have experienced already the normalization of trauma. And what that has done and the havoc that has wreaked in our community. So you know, all we can do right now is continue to pray for the family of Mayor Locke and pray that that accountability, not justice, but but those who are responsible are held accountable, and hopefully, possibly, we can see some change in the law there. The last current event is not a current event. I want to get you all's reactions. We are all New Yorkers, and I want to get your reactions to our new mayor in New York City. I just want to get reactions to the mayor of New York City. To our mayor, Eric Adams. I would like to hear what your reactions are initially. It has been not quite 3 months.
And in the first 3 weeks, he's been quite visible. And it's not clear to me that that visibility always came with the kind of pause and thoughtfulness that you want your leader to have if you're going to trust him or her moving forward. Yeah. I think that there's been a great deal of energy dedicated toward fashioning a particular image.
Yeah.
And image is important. But if a layperson can perceive that an image is being curated, then one has to start to work very hard now to make sure that behind that image there is some substance. And we need to start hearing some things that help us to understand, number one, how difficult a time we're living in.
Yes.
And the conflicts and the tensions that have to be addressed. There are no simple answers to any of this. Yeah. And what I would like to see is something like some courage to say what might not be appealing for purposes of immediate public consumption. Mm-hmm. I don't want really, this is me personally, I'm not particularly interested in many more press conferences right now.
Yeah, you want truth, we want truth-telling. Right. And to say, listen, don't minimize the challenging time we're in. Yes. Right? You can't swagger your way out of everything. And I think people want the truth. Hey, we're in a tough situation. And you can't talk away violence in our communities, right? We are facing some real challenges right now. And it's not, and again, it's early, right? Yeah. I remember a friend of mine, Dr. Christina Greer, talked about this in an article she did for the Grill about this, how, it's dangerous in this moment to be so unscripted, right? Especially.
That's what I mean. Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah.
It's just so dangerous to be so unscripted and always having to retract or qualify or come after the fact and explain. Out of a leader, as you said, you would want to believe that there's more thoughtfulness into the statements made, into preparation for press conferences, so that you don't find yourself having to explain. And what happens, what is happening, and this is my fear, because I want the brother to do well. He has to do well. For him to do well means the city does well. So I want to be clear, he has many critics already, and there are people who are in kind of the kind of holding stage. Let me see what's going to happen. But he has to do well, because at the end of the day, he is the mayor of New York City. But I want a leader who is not as concerned about, as you said, image, platform, profile, persona. I want a leader to lead, and lead with honesty, and not with recklessness. I mean, think about this. Think about the countless people who live now in the wake of the death of loved ones who died from heroin addiction.
Yeah.
And to hear the leader of the city compare the addiction to cheese. Now, this almost seems like it would be a joke when you hear that.
Right.
Yeah.
To the addiction to heroin. Right? Yep. Now, we love cheese, a good macaroni and cheese. I mean, listen.
A little 3 macaroni and cheese go a long way.
But, and I've had a lot of cheese in time, macaroni and cheese, and the most I got was the itis. I mean, I went to sleep.
Right.
But heroin addiction. I mean, I don't even have to say much. Yes, that's it. I mean, say more, Alicia.
Listen, you asked what do I think about Eric Adams, and what is very clear to me is that there is not a centering of the lived experiences of the everyday people of this city.
Yeah.
But there is a centering of ego.
Yep.
Right? And we all know what that grandiose, egotistical, and I mean that in the most Latin way. But to do the kind of recovery work that is required to bring a city of this size back to its feet requires a level of deeper understanding about what it means to center the needs of people. Right?
Yeah.
That when, and understanding when we think about like this world and this city as concentric circles, and that those people who are on the margins are often the most overlooked, being mindful that even more people have been pushed to the margin. So this is no place, no time to play with ego, right? Right? And it also makes me wonder then about the people by which who are informing and advising him. Now, it may very well be that when you are leading with ego, you can't tell nobody nothing. You can't tell nobody. But my offering is that, my hope is that there's an advisement, and there's a spirit of centering the needs of people that is mindful and being thoughtful about how you're speaking about things that are beyond just a matter of appetite. Right?
Yeah. I would say, practically speaking, hire some good speech writers.
There it is.
Well, that's what the article Christina Greer talked about, getting speech writers.
He's going off the cuff.
Yeah, because you can't.
And here's the other thing. I think we believe too much in our charismatic appeal.
Charisma, it has its place.
It has its place, but it's not the end-all or be-all of anything.
It is not. And, here's the thing. You said something reminded me of Aubrey Hendrick's book, Politics of Jesus. There's that piece that I quote often, and you reminded me of that, Alicia. Treat the people's needs as holy.
As holy.
Don't use their needs for sound bites.
Right, to push your agenda.
Right? Treat the needs as holy. And speak to those needs and address those needs. And it's only because things are not necessarily going to get easier. Sure. COVID is just part of the problem, right? The pandemic part. There are a lot of issues in this city right now that we have to address. Violence being one. Housing issues are still real. Inequity in the school system. You can go on and on. There are issues that everyday people are having to make decisions. And people are having to make these decisions every day. So I hope that there's a level of, not in him personally, but there's a level of maturation in the administration.
Yeah, there you go.
So that we can begin to see some things dealt with in a particular kind of way. So we're going to continue to pray and lift our mayor. Even as we speak now, you hear the sirens outside, right? We in Central Harlem. I mean, that's real. So, I mean, listen, we could say more about this. But for me, I'm going to withhold saying more because it's early. And I don't want to be one of those people who maintain early judgment throughout the tenure of service, right? Because people can change in office. People can grow in office. But I know somewhere, and I'm going to say this, I'm going to leave it. I'm going to leave it, move on. Somewhere, I know Bill de Blasio is like,
And you think you didn't want
I ain't as bad as y'all thought.
Right.
But all right, we're gonna move on. All right, so we're gonna get into some issues that really are at play now politically, and I want my friend Dr. Wallace Maurice to lead us in this. There's been a lot of talk recently, and this issue has become, well, it's all politicized. The issues around critical race theory. Right? And this desire, this infatuation with erasure, right? Wanting, and I'll pause. I want you to set this one off for us, man. What is really going on with this issue around critical race theory?
Well, one of the last conversations we had I raised this.
Yeah,
I told everyone, listen, we got to watch this.
Yeah.
I did not even expect that it would be as big of a political football as it is. Right now, in 37 states, legislation is being pushed to ban what even the legislators can't define as critical race theory. And you know what I figured out? They don't want to define it. Because if they can leave it ambiguous, it can cover as much as they need it to cover. For them, the issue is not critical and it's not theory.
It's about race.
It's about race.
Yeah.
And they figured out that they can use it as a wedge issue to really get at some discontent that has gone mostly unexpressed or certainly not expressed in the most civil ways by right-wing radicals and some who aren't so radical. But this is really important now because it's February, Black History Month. And all over the country, some of our very best teachers are struggling. Listen, let's just put it out there. Black History Month was a kind of bone in the first place, right? A bone thrown to us in the first place, right? But even now, in the state of Alabama, for example, there's a crisis because so many citizens, white citizens in Alabama, are now calling the State Board of Education to say that my children are being exposed to Black History Month programming, and that's critical race theory. And no matter how much you say that's not critical race theory, it is critical race theory for them. Because when they opposed it, they never understood what it really was in an academic sense. When they opposed it, when they protested, this is what they had in mind.
Yeah.
So here we are having to deal in Black History Month with the prospect that even the limited attention and space we were giving our young people for Black History Month, even that is jeopardized now. Even states and counties are having to wrestle with what constitutes critical race theory. And here's the rub. In some states, to teach critical race theory, whatever somebody thinks it is a fireable offense. So some of our very best teachers, and not just those who are teaching now, but what about those who could or would be teachers if they had the latitude to really exercise their gifts and to pour into young people the things that were poured into them in colleges and universities? And so I'm really alarmed by this, and I'm alarmed at the strategy that has been used to really undermine anything that could be called or inflected by a Black point of view. Yeah. This whole thing is sweeping, and we're already, I mean, you spoke of unequal education, we're already in jeopardy. And this is, to my mind, an effort to erase altogether any hint of a kind of Black perspective on living and being in this country.
Well, yes. But then there's another piece that I'm going to just lift and let you all get at, is it's also wanting to assuage white guilt. Yeah. Because think about this for a second. If I talk about slavery, right, that some young white child in the school in Alabama, and if I talk about it truthfully, I must talk about the institution, the brutality of the institution, the inhumanity of the institution. There are people who don't want that truth being told under this. Well, that was not me or my father. That was my great. No, but as we always know, the old argument, but you live in the privilege of that moment.
Right.
But you don't want to hear that narrative. There are persons who like the idea that Thanksgiving is about Miles Standish having turkey with Native Americans, and that's it.
Yeah.
Nothing about the utter genocide that took place, because it's not just about Black history. It's truth-telling about the foundation of this country.
Yeah, absolutely.
And being able to inject that honestly into the historical conversation that people are trying to come at. And let me tell you why now. I'm gonna touch on this later, but why now? Because they can.
Yeah.
Because these same state legislatures are Republican. They are going to push a lot of different laws and attempt a lot of things because the Supreme Court, I'm going to get to this later, the Supreme Court has basically been hands-off in saying it goes back to the code word, what? State rights.
Yep.
State rights. You about to say something, Alicia?
This white guilt thing, I'm always perplexed by the insidiousness and the strategy and of white supremacy, right? The violence that white supremacy produces, the evil that it produces. And on the same coin, so afraid of the realities of that very same thing, right?
Yeah.
I'm always perplexed by that. Go ahead.
Yeah. That's the question I always want to ask. Like, what are you afraid of? And here's the to further your point, the legislation almost always points to issues that they fear are divisive. That's the language, divisive, right? And you have to ask, divisive to whom?
To whom? Yeah.
Because the truth is, if you narrate history, in American history, that is not true, that is white supremacist in its orientation, it's already divisive.
That's right.
By nature, it's already divisive.
Yeah.
When you exclude me and my history, and you exclude our people as historical subjects, that's divisive. So I ought to sort of sue you now.
Right.
Because you've broken your own law.
Yes.
Well ahead of time.
Yes.
But it isn't about me. It's about, in doing so, they have centered white subjects, right? And the feelings of whiteness.
Yes.
And if you hurt those feelings, and now suddenly they're all concerned about the feelings of children. You're not concerned about the feeling of children at all.
You want them to go to school in the pandemic with no mask on. You don't care about them kids.
Don't do that. Yeah, you're not concerned about that. You're not concerned about that because
this country is anti-black and anti-child. So let's just let's just start there.
Yeah, because I was looking at the clock. But you're right. It is anti-black, anti-children, anti-women. You could call the role, and it's pro-white maleness. That's what it is, and that's what it is. And when you're in a moment when we start holding that gaze accountable, you get a backlash. Even if it is manufactured like this one, it is a reaction to the diminishing. Let's take a phrase that people know. It is a reaction to the browning of America. Right? And let's hold on to this vestige of power, because we don't want another narrative to dominate. We're already going to lose our status. So let's hold on. Let's make sure that our false narrative is the narrative.
Absolutely.
And it's tragic. It's tragic. Okay, see.
I love that you use the word manufactured.
Yes.
But I also want to point out that let's not confuse anyone. Manufactured doesn't mean not designed. It is absolutely
intentional.
It is absolutely designed. Think about the number of well-funded think tanks.
That's right.
On the right. Folks who are paid to sit around a table and conceive
these things,
of these things in ways that are designed to alienate and disenfranchise from disenfranchise us from the very centers of power that they keep telling us we can participate in if we are good enough or smart enough or graduate from certain schools.
Yes.
Or have the same kind of job or have the right kind of job or live in the right kind of community, all of those things. If we're respectable enough, and of course, we know that those respectability politics don't mean a hill of beans.
No, it's the good Negro.
There you go.
Yep. And that's what it boils down to. You can advance if you're the good Negro.
And there's nothing more tragic and sadder than to see one.
Yeah, hold on. Wait a minute. So this is Alicia said the Supreme Court choice was otherwise. So let's shift then.
Yeah.
To the fact that President Biden has said that the Supreme Court vacancy will be filled by a black woman. Talk to me about that, Alicia.
See, that's what he said. It was what they call online. It was a political trade-off for the state of South Carolina.
Stop. You mean because South Carolina helped him get elected? Oh, okay.
All right then.
So Jim Clyburn influence.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah.
You know how he took that up. Yeah. And then
Yeah.
okay. Cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, it
Well,
was.
at least he keeping promises.
Listen, one of.
He didn't forget he said it.
He didn't forget.
He said, "I said it."
And now I'm gonna do it.
Okay.
So it's. I applaud it because it's well past time.
Yeah.
To think that they're not black female jurists who shouldn't be on the Supreme Court, and they're saying, given some of those who are on the Supreme Court, especially some of the more recent, the more recent additions. Yes, Brett and Amy, the more recent additions.
Brett and Amy,
the more recent additions. And
Most recent. Oh.
I don't even know what the qualifications are anymore at this point. I mean.
But that goes to what you were saying, though, about the good Negro. But they say that, right? But then you do all of the things. I had to call the name. Help me now. J. Michelle Childs, Leandra Kruger, Judge Brown Jackson have all of the things they have told us, right?
Well, except one doesn't. I'm going to come back. One doesn't.
Who?
The one that being pushed from South Carolina.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
See,
J. Michelle.
Yes. No Ivy League background.
Oh,
Now.
That's a deal breaker.
Yeah. Let me tell you why I want her to be the Supreme Court justice. I want her. You know why? Because it's not going to change a whole lot.
Right.
But we've lied. The system has lied. The whole thing, what you talked about, respectability politics, it is always has been elitist.
Yeah.
And so, I would have, like, what if Barack Obama had graduated from City College?
Right.
And not Columbia.
Right.
There would be no President Barack Obama.
Nope.
Because it's only certain class of people who have the opportunity. I like her because she went to public schools, to public universities, and she's not Ivy League. Right. That gives hope. I mean, it's slim.
It's slim.
It's super slim. Super slim. I mean, think about it. And Joe should do that. And I hate to tell him what he should do. He's the president, but.
But that's the thing. I mean, to that. But we do all of the things.
Yeah.
And then they move the goalpost.
The goalpost.
Right?
Yeah.
As soon as it was remembered in our memory that he had said that, because it came back up in the last few weeks. But I want.
Hold on, you trying to say he would act like he forgot he said it if they didn't bring it back up?
He was over trying to do Build Back Better, and he was trying to do all. And they were like, remember you said?
Right.
Aha.
But the conversation that me and my friends have been having about it, yes, it is fantastic that a black woman is up for consideration for the highest court. And at the same time, it is exhausting to be the first. It is the level of weariness to not only to have that weight on your shoulders. And let me remind everybody, this panel doesn't need a reminder, but black women have carried democracy on our backs for years, right? Yeah. We have carried democracy on our back. We saw that in the last 3-4 elections, the number of black women who have voted toward ideals that promote wellness in this country. We have done that. But then you will sit and say that we are now unqualified to be in the highest court in the country?
This is a very interesting issue, though, because the sister who's getting traction, right, from South Carolina that Congressman Clyburn is with, I mean, she's also been supported by Lindsey Graham.
Right. Right.
I'm not saying it makes me look at her differently.
Right. She had a lot of bipartisan.
She had a
support.
lot of bipartisan support, so this is an interesting moment. But it, as you said, don't do it. Oh, don't do that. 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 I'm glad you had the mic down. I'm glad you had the mic down. But it is weary. But it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. But I think for those reasons, I want to really break that ceiling, the elite ceiling, right? That if you didn't go to Harvard, Yale, not Princeton, but Harvard, Yale, you're just not going to get access to these spaces. Columbia, you're not going to get access if you didn't do that. Which
Part
is
of the
hard.
law journal. You got to have.
Yeah, you got to be the editor of the law journal
Yep.
and all that to get these positions. I mean, and it's. I remember when it was talk about Colin Powell running for president.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not a Republican, okay? But Colin Powell went to City College.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only reason.
Right.
I was like, yes, I need somebody who went to a regular school.
Right.
Like, give me some hope. That's hope.
Right.
Because if the only way I can ever rise to those positions is through certain pedigree, it's not real then.
Yeah.
It's not a possibility. And so I want to, and I think Joe should do that.
Yeah.
Because he went to public school. You see, look at his pedigree. Joe didn't go to Harvard or Yale or Columbia. You know what I mean? So what, University of Delaware and then Syracuse Law?
But look how long it took him to get.
I mean,
It took a minute.
he been treading the wine press. Bro. He been treading the wine
Can
press.
I also say this? Are we gonna get to the point where we can stop talking about first black anything?
Oh God,
This is the 21st century.
my neck hurt.
We ought to be embarrassed.
First black.
We ought to be embarrassed.
Mm-hmm. It should be.
And I don't mean we as people of color or black people or
the
black
country.
women. I mean the country.
Yeah.
The world ought to be embarrassed.
But it also sends a message.
Yeah.
See, it's interesting. We don't have, but it's interesting the spaces of access we have. That's the spaces where we have access, and the spaces where we can actually thrive.
Good. That's good.
The spaces we can thrive are very interesting because we can't thrive in every space.
Right.
But the spaces that we're allowed to thrive, and even when we thrive financially, I mean, like you just said, think about what's going on in the NFL right now. We ain't talking about that, but the lack of diversity in coaches, owners, forget about it. Supposedly, the NFL is like begging Robert Smith to buy the Denver Broncos, right? So we can say, well, we got a black owner.
Yeah.
I mean, think about this, and think about how it wouldn't have been an issue if Brian Flores had not decided to sue the NFL, which is courageous because he knows in his back of his mind, I'm never gonna get a job again.
Yep.
Now, I don't
He
know
knew
if
that.
they'll be that obvious, but they have been obvious.
Right.
They don't care.
Right.
They don't care about the perception. They don't care about if they cared about perception, we see more black coaches.
Yep.
If they really care. So they don't care about perception. It's money. It's the bottom line. And it's the same thing back in the days with black quarterbacks. Now, here it is. If you want to get a championship, you better have a black quarterback. You better have who can run. And before it was the black quarterbacks can't feint. They're not smart.
Yeah.
But so it's insane.
Now, since I teach English, I'm real sensitive to language. And I think that it's important that we start to think not so much about the lack of diversity, but the refusal
Come on.
of
I like
diversity.
that. I like that.
Because we let them off the hook
Yeah.
with lack as if it's some kind of natural
Yeah.
phenomena. This is consistent refusal. Come on.
You see this,
This
man?
is and it's historical.
Yeah.
And
intentional.
And intentional.
Because lack implies that there's not enough people to fill. And that's just
Or
not
inability.
True. Right, or
or-
inability.
no.
That's just not true. So
That's it. I like the refusal. The refusal to diversify the NFL.
Yeah.
They
I
don't
mean, at
want
least
to.
consider it. At least consider
No,
that
you
this
know.
is not just like, this is refusal.
I ain't considering. I'm done. You converted me. You converted me in 15 seconds. It's refused. But you know what it is? We have to start using that language now.
Yeah.
Because that language frames the conversation.
Yep.
Using refusal changes the conversation.
Yep.
And it changes how we engage it. No, this is not about a lack of diversity.
it forces ownership.
Yes.
You just have to own the fact that you do not want to do
Yes.
it.
You all
yes.
don't want. It's again, like you said, it's not because they're not qualified coaches.
Yeah.
You don't want them.
That's how racism thrives.
Woo.
people speak in ways that would have you imagine that this was a function of the weather.
It's very much. It's not you. It's not you. It's me.
Yeah.
It's one of those things.
Yeah.
This is, we wanted it to be different, but it just didn't work out.
It didn't work out.
It didn't work out. We wanted it to be. We wanted to do this. Now,
we've been waiting for diversity to come.
Yeah, and arrive. We arrived with diversity. Where are you?
On the cloud. Diversity's here.
It's deep. But, we laugh, but it's real because that changes the conversation. The refusal, the intentional refusal, diversity, where art thou? We're here for it to come upon us. No, you refuse to do it. Yeah. You don't want to hire black coaches. The Rooney Rule is now it's performance.
God.
Oh, we that's why I love what Brian Flores did. And look at it. Look at this though. Aided and abetted by Belichick.
Uh-huh.
He said, "Oh, I effed up." Look at the text. The text, he got busted. Oops.
Yep.
Because now he having his own back conversation. Man, look like you gonna get the job. Right. And Flores didn't even interview yet. Right.
Yep.
So that was just all performance to say, hey, we did interview a black candidate, but hey. And I'm not going to talk about, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to leave that alone. I'm not going to leave it alone because then we get into colorism, and I'm not do that. But I love that language, man. That's refusal. That's and that refusal and the idea of refusal is transcendent in this country.
Yeah. Yep.
It's not a lack of diversity.
Yep.
Right? And if you hire someone in your corporation to do diversity and inclusion, and they're the only one,
Absurd.
I remember watching the documentary on Maynard Jackson, and man, powerful. If you've never seen the documentary on Maynard Jackson, please go see it. It's called Maynard. But when he became mayor of Atlanta, they hated him. The white power brokers of the city hated Maynard Jackson, and when they were now we all go through Hartsfield Jackson Airport, which is deep. But when they were building it, right? And Maynard was like, listen, 25% of these contracts need to go to black folk, all right? And they were saying they couldn't find anyone to build the runways. Maynard came back to the airlines, Eastern, at the time Eastern, sure how long ago it was, and said, listen, I've studied your plans. He said, in a runway, this is classic, is just a big driveway. He said, black people can make driveways.
If we can't do nothing else.
We can make a driveway. He said, so you're going to find these contractors who can make you a big driveway for you. Right. Or when he went to the banks, there were no blacks on the boards of the banks in Atlanta. And they said, then they told Maynard, well, you go find. He said, that's not my job. Right. You find them, or else we're taking our money of the city out these banks. People underestimate how courageous he was and what he forced Atlanta to become. Right? But it's the same way. You have to, once you're able to develop strategy when you got the right language. Because it's hard to develop strategy for a lack of diversity. Yeah. But there's a strategy we could develop if you refuse to do this. Yeah.
Because lack of diversity means you're the problem. Y'all are the problem.
Right. Ain't enough of y'all who can do it. Y'all ain't good enough. Hold on, get that mic up there, because you be saying some good stuff. I want to get on the mic. You be saying,
Listen, I'd be talking off the cuff.
I know. It's a good and bad. If you do it, I'll do like this. Yeah, I done heard some of the things. That's why I was like, keep it there. But every now and again, I rage back up. All right, listen. We push the time. I want to hit a few more things, and it goes with what we said. I want to talk about what's happening. It has died down because it's no longer part of the spin cycle per se. Issues around voting, right, in this country, and this is something that I've been really harping on, talking about for a long time now. And I want people to understand. I'll start by saying this. There's not been a time in modern history where state and local politics was as important as it is right now. And the problem is that state and local politics is the biggest space of disengagement. We get fixated on the federal elections, right? President, Senate, Congress, the like. But state and local politics is critical, all right? So I'll start by saying this, and you all can chime in because there's a lot I can say, and I don't want to dominate this conversation. I'm going to start with Alicia's home state, all right? I love it. That's my second home. I love Atlanta. But in that election, when Senator Warnock and Senator Ossoff won, and the state elected Joe Biden, I mean, the commodification was instant on social media. Blue shirts to the stage, flip the state. We flipped the state. And I sat there watching on TV. I said, y'all ain't flipped nothing. The state legislature is Republican. And I don't think, and I blame the narrative
That's what it is.
that was conceived by smart people who start saying we flipped the state. Because what you set yourself up is for disengagement in the election. Because now people say, if we flip the state, how is it they passing these kind of draconian voting laws? I thought we won. No, you didn't really win, right? So let's talk about this voting issue and what's happening. And be mindful, folk, that a lot of states that are changing the voting laws are Republican states. That means the state legislature is Republican. And they are making these changes because they can and have a Republican governor in place. And they're making these changes and they can. And what annoyed me, and I'll come back to Georgia before I stop, last month, the president and vice president were in the AUC, that's Atlanta University Center, all right, in Atlanta, speaking on the campus of Morehouse. And there were people who were protesting, and some very high up folk, maybe even one of your Spelman sisters, she did, who didn't come. There was a scheduling conflict. You want to run for governor, but you don't show up when the president comes. Come on, and who felt like, people who were organizing on the ground around voting wanted President Biden to do something, to do more, right? And to me, it wasn't that the president can't do, but some responsibility on the local level has to be taken. So let's talk about that, man. Let's talk about that.
So I'll just say a couple of things quickly. I think when you raise the word narrative, it's real important that we understand that during the Trump administration, there was so much distraction in Washington that no one was paying attention to what was happening at the state level. You think that was an accident? No, he was the chief distractor.
Yes.
Right? So that others at lower levels could get some things done. And they put some plans in place that are still going to be felt for the next 10 years at least.
Or longer.
At school boards, state committees, policymakers, all of these folks were almost put in place under cover of night. I almost want to put it that way, but it was because we were looking over there at a narrative that is spoken in the language of federal government, and we missed the subtext. We weren't hearing anything really about what was happening at the state and local levels, and that, I think, is a thing that we're going to be paying for some time.
Yeah, I think about the first thing you said about this level of disengagement. And it makes me wonder, especially in the last 10, 12, maybe 15 years, about that level, because we as a collective are very much consumed by personality politics. And often people who are working on the ground or running for office don't have we don't have all the things. Stacey has kind of like coalesced around this like personality, right, on a local level. But I think that and I wonder, and I would love for us to be thinking about this, is like, how do we help people begin to re-engage? How do we, I don't know if it's a civics class we need to put on over at the Schomburg or what, but we need to begin to help people understand that the decisions that are made about your day-to-day life are not made in the White House.
Absolutely not. They're made right here. It depends on who you put in city council in New York, who's in the assembly, who's in the Senate, who's the governor. All those things matter on a local level, and that's the space where disengagement is the most. But I'm going to tell you this. I'm going to just call it. I'm a Democrat, but I'm going to give Republicans some props because they play the long game, and they strategize. Their politics is not reactionary.
Right.
It is well thought through. It's like three-card Monty politics.
Right.
Yeah.
You got me over here looking,
Yeah.
as you said, while you over here killing. And we keep falling for it. We miss moments. Like, you know.
Our politics are always defensive.
On the
Yes.
defense.
We're
Yes.
always playing defense.
Yes. And it's hard to be defensive. Let's think about sport. We just talked about sports. When you're on the defensive against a well-coached team, hard to win that fight. And we've been taking L's.
Yep.
We've been taking some losses. And here's the thing. I think one of the ways we can actually combat what's happening is, again, honesty. We don't get it. I want to see someone get on. I want to pundit and say, listen. We've lost this.
Yeah.
We've lost this battle. We've lost in the Supreme Court. That all these things happened when we were distracted to death. And we've incurred some losses. There are people angry about the change in voting laws that your anger won't reverse it.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't care how much you march, it won't change it. You in a state with a Republican legislature, with a Republican governor, it's not changing. So you got to back up and regroup, because saying I'm mad is not going to reverse anything. You got to do, because watch this. We don't know when those meetings happen, Republican.
Right.
We don't know when they happen. But my God, if we get together, post it. We taking selfies at the meetings.
We tell everything.
We telling them, we putting everything. Listen,
The
we're gonna have a
address.
black planning meeting
Right.
on February 18th. And we want all the actors to show up and make sure. And here it is. Hashtag. That's what we doing.
Every time.
Every time. Hashtag
Every time.
this. And make sure you get. And what's the hits we gonna get? And I mean, this is insane.
Yeah.
I remember. you
Even
remember-
that
can't
is
strategize
reactive.
that
The
way.
It is.
announcement is reactive.
Right.
It is.
No one has undertaken to approach our politics. I shouldn't say no one, but very few people have undertaken to approach our politics in some systematic, forward-looking way, right? I mentioned think tanks before, right? These folks are funded millions and millions of dollars to spend all day thinking and writing.
And you don't know who they are.
You have no idea where they are.
Not
you don't know
us.
where they meet.
Honey,
Not
you saw
us.
them at the Starbucks. You wouldn't know.
Not
Exactly.
us. We don't know who they are. I sat a month ago, Alicia, and I literally met at a restaurant in Philadelphia one of the lawyers for the Georgia State Republican Party. Wow. Had an amazing conversation. Never heard this man in my life.
Wow.
Never heard this man in my life.
And that's how he wanted. That's how he wants it.
absolutely.
That's exactly how.
Oh, no. Let me tell you, and I'm not saying this to be funny, but I did a journey. Many of you who watch and know what the journeys are here at FCBC. Do you remember the journey when Jamal Joseph was on? Jamal Joseph, one of my brother's beloved, man, a mentor, and I mean, amazing. But he was a Black Panther, the youngest captain. He was part of Panther 21. And I don't know if you saw today that they have a biopic coming out about Tupac's mother on the Phoenix Shakur that's being produced by Jamal Joseph and Jasmine Guy. But he was here on this stage and talked about COINTELPRO and how they infiltrated the Black Panther Party. They knew they were informants. He said, the government don't need to do that now. He said, we put everything on social media. We tell everything we're doing. So we don't have to, we announce everything we're doing. And I never forget, what was the, oh man, I'm at a blank now. What was the Attorney General in the Trump last, the one who was, the last one. Oh gosh, how did I forget this man's name? Anyway, there was a hearing about all the protests going on. And in the hearing, they asked him about these kind of, Antifa movements. And here's what he said. He said, it'll come, Bill Barr. Oh yeah, William Barr. And he said, well, we've studied these organizations, and what we've realized, he said this on television. And they're good at rallying, but they're not very organized. That's what he said. So what did he just say? We ain't worried about that.
We're not worried about y'all.
We don't mind y'all protesting and carrying on. We know y'all not organizing nothing.
Look, true liberation happens under the cover of night.
Ooh.
You think about every revolt, whether successful or not. You think about every movement that did what it set out to do was planned under the cover of night. And that night is metaphorical, right?
Don't do that.
Right? Oh, I'll preach it.
I feel you. I feel you trying to sneak a preach.
Huh? But I mean, but I even think about on the flip side of that, the Ku Klux Klan and all of those people, when they planned those movements, it was done under the cover of night.
And
right?
under covers.
Yeah, literally, 2 holes. And so that needs to be the approach that we now take to this liberation work, right? It is not something to be consumed by TV. It is not something to be consumed by the internet. It is not something to be consumed by our own ego to show others that we are liberators, right? The true liberators of this work historically have been people whose names you did not know.
Did not know. Did not know. And that's part of it. Like you said it has to be a radical commitment to educate our people, to help our folk understand what is really at stake. We made decisions in 2016 based on personality without knowing what was at stake. We didn't realize what was at cause. Oh, I don't like Hillary. I wasn't a Hillary Clinton fan either, but I knew that Supreme Court was at stake.
That's right.
I knew the federal judiciary was at stake. And the question was, who do you want putting judges in, Hillary or Donald Trump?
Her emails.
Right? And so all these people are, what we say? Her email, yeah. I don't like Hillary. No. It is understand, and I blame the Democratic Party. The narrative was horrible. They were so convinced there was no way that Donald Trump could win, they never told people what was at stake if Hillary didn't win. And they didn't do that work. And now we suffered for 4 years. And then all the decisions that Trump did, the Supreme Court, I mean, think about this. The Supreme Court gutted the Voting Rights Act. The Supreme Court said that corporations are people. Therefore, corporations can give unlimited amounts of money to political action committees, to PACs. I mean, think about this. Politics, as we know it, about ideas ideas.
And think about how moderate, as a consequence, the Chief Justice has become.
He has. Listen, people talk about Justice Roberts. Chief Justice Roberts, the last thing, what do you know he's thinking about every day? His legacy. And the last thing he wants it to be known is that under Chief Justice Roberts, it was a political court. And that's why he makes decisions that annoys conservatives so many times. Because he knows, he doesn't want his legacy to be that under my tenure, this was a purely political court.
Absolutely.
And that's why he sides. But you see, here's the problem. He can help us when it's 5-4. 6-3, can't do it, right? 6-3, and that's what the number is around the Supreme. 6-3, and so yes, we celebrate. And here's the thing, and I'm not belittling it. We celebrate the appointment of a black woman, but no matter who you put in that seat, won't move the needle one bit, one bit. And so the consequences, elections have consequences, and that's how we have to start thinking. Not I'm voting because I like, or this person's popular. What is at stake if I don't engage this issue, right? What is at stake when I don't vote? Because we know how to complain. We live with the consequences. But what do we do? Right now, Daniel Patrick Moynihan said, all politics are local. All politics are local. And so the best thing to do is to invest yourself in understanding how politics works on a local municipal level.
But this is why language theme, again, is so important, because so much of our movement as voters are about what we will get out of the candidate. What we will get as a result. And I love the language of what is at stake. Right? Because that is a reframing of why I'm doing this. It is not a self-centered or transactional. It's actually thinking about a larger communal impact. Man, that's so good.
And that's part of the re-education imperative. And it's urgent. It's not the thing we need to try to do in the run-up to an election. We need to be doing it now.
Right now.
Year-round.
Year-round,
what
absolutely.
What is at stake? Because here's what, and I'll say this, and I'll get your quick reaction before we end tonight. The narrative that started early in Joe Biden's term by Democrats on the ground, that he ain't doing nothing, he's not delivering, you are teeing up a Republican in 2024. Watch this. Who is not Trump-like. See, this is what people miss. We so worried about the Trump, we not seeing the Reagan.
That's good.
We so concerned about another Trump-like figure, no matter how, let's be clear historically, no matter how bad Trump was, he didn't touch Reagan.
Yep.
He didn't come close to what Reagan did to in this country, to poor people, to people of color in this country.
Right.
He was dangerous. Why? Because there's something insidious about someone who cuts your head off and smiles at you and tells you you're a good person while he's doing it. And I like you. And has charm while he's castrating you, while he's raping you. There's something about that. The Trumps don't scare me. Right. It is someone who can come up, who can rally folk.
And they're coming.
And oh, you better believe it.
Yep.
And we have to, at that moment, not sit and say, what's at stake? Listen, right now, politically, we are in a, as Democrats, I think we all here are Democrats, we are actually in a life fight right now. We don't realize it. Because think about if a Republican gets the presidency. I'm not talking about the local stuff. And God forbid something happens on that court to those liberals.
Yeah.
We can't survive 6-3. Let me tell you, we surely can't survive. 7-2. 7-2. I pray my great-grandchild will have a better time.
Right.
At that point, right?
Yep.
And I mean, like for me, you know, this is real for me. I just had a granddaughter, so.
Granddaddy.
Woo, I'm pop.
Pop.
And it means something for me. What is her future going to be like?
Oh, yeah.
Because the consequences of 2016, she will feel as an adult.
Yeah.
She will feel as an adult. And so that means something. And so I implore people. I mean, we have these conversations, and we'll continue to have them because we want to do our best to really have real, authentic conversation. And I say the reason why I like us and when we talk is because people don't realize, and I'm not ragging news, but the news cycle is driven by sensationalism, not truth-telling. And they don't want truth speakers, they want characters. Okay, that's what you're seeing. And they are characters who are playing a role. And it's not about truth. And so, and everyone is pushing for the ratings, which translates to money, everything. But we have to start speaking some unpleasant truths. That's what it means being fearless.
Yeah.
To speak uncomfortable truths. I talked about this on Tuesday night. That's what we have to do. And I hope in some way that our conversations are doing that. And we continue to move in the spirit of fearlessness as we engage these, because these conversations our people need.
They matter.
They matter.
These conversations matter, and we hope that we are inspiring more conversations. Right? We ought not be the only ones having these conversations.
Right.
No. I hope there will be some other people who will take the baton and do something similar, because we really do need a reorientation. We need a re-education. I don't think we can say it enough. We have only come to understand politics as transactional. We got to think about the future.
Yeah.
And be forward-looking.
Yeah.
It's essential for your kids, our grandkids, and so on.
Yeah.
It really is.
I mean, I say that because, and this is not to pat us on the back, and I want to say this before we close tonight. The church, even though we're seeing a decline in membership, churches are still trusted institutions.
Absolutely.
There are still people who we may feel have given up. They haven't given up. They're waiting.
That's good.
They haven't really given up. They're waiting for something different to emerge, for something that is not so rigid and divisive to emerge, because the historic role of the church in our community is significant. These conversations, once upon a time, always happened in the church. This is where people were informed.
That's right.
So more of our institutions should be having these kinds of conversations and not be afraid to talk about politics and not be afraid to speak truth, because you just can't be a prophet when it comes to regurgitating biblical scenes. Being prophetic is about speaking in the moment, right now. And these kinds of conversations are the things that I think will aid our community, our people, as we move forward. They have to happen. So, with that said, we'll be back. Don't think we're done. Next Thursday, 7 p.m., February 24th, myself, Dr. Maurice Wallace, Reverend Alicia Gordon, we'll be back to talk about politics. We just going to talk because, we talk about everything. And I hope that tonight has been helpful, informative, insightful, that it has been encouraging, uplifting, but more than anything, it has given birth to desire to know more, to get more, to learn more. And so, man, I want to thank you all. As always, I love it. This is the first time we did this in the same space.
Yeah, it's crazy.
You know, we sit here. I gotta say this to y'all. This is the first time that that Revelation, Dr. Maurice met tonight in person.
Isn't that crazy?
Always been on.
And we've done what, 40,
But that's my
5 of these?
sister.
Five, something like that. Yeah.
But that is my sister.
Right,
Yeah.
in real life.
And so this was good to be in this space tonight. And we may even change the setup next week. We're gonna be right back here next week. So listen, everyone, thank you for joining us tonight. We didn't keep it too long, and I hope that these conversations weren't an end, that as Dr. Maurice said, that it creates other conversations that you all are having with your friends and others, and we'll continue to have these empowering conversations that awaken the conscience today. So until next Thursday at 7 p.m., tell somebody. Tell somebody. Tell somebody. Next Thursday, 7 p.m., all FCBC platforms will be here for part 2 of this year's Empowering Conversations. And until then, much love, peace, and many blessings, beloved.